The following is a production of The Reporter, Delaware County's leading news source.
Well, thank you all for coming, and since I'm first, I get to say the first thank you without anybody else taking that away from me. We are here because we all care enough about our community that we're willing to step forward and say, I'm willing to take this leadership role. I'm here because this is my home since I moved here 7 years ago. I fell in love with Delhi when my husband was here interviewing, and in less than a day, we knew that if my husband got a position here, we would be moving to Delhi, we'd be living in the village, because there was so much that brought us here. The charm of this tiny rural town in such an amazingly beautiful area was the first thing that drew our attention. But even just getting to spend one day walking around, people were friendly. And not overly so, but friendly and nice and welcoming, and that helped make us certain that this is where we wanted to be. 7 years later, we still are enjoying being here, and I've enjoyed the chance that I've had to be part of this community, both as a volunteer with Rotary and with the Delhi Beautification Committee, but also on town board. And for the last year, I've been on the village board, filling up the big opening left when Barb Jones stepped down. I'm running this year, I'm sure you all read the article, because I do care about this community, and there's more that I can offer. This past year, I got to work with Ian on the sewer committee, as well as Parks and Rec, two very different parts of life in the village, and just working on the quality of life that we have and trying to promote that. I've also been on other committees and a part of the budget to make sure that what we need to do to help support our community, our public works, and our employees is being addressed as best as we can. So I'm sure you're going to hear similar things from everybody else in greater detail, but why we are here is so that we can serve our community. And that is why I'm running for village trustee. Thank you.
Ian, you're up.
My name is Ian Lamont. I grew up just outside of town on Rosa Circle. My parents still are there, and when I graduated from law school, it was my goal to come back to the area and practice law here, and I feel very blessed to have been able to achieve that goal. I've been back in the village as a village resident since 2018, and my wife and I are raising our 3 and soon to be 4 beautiful children, and our fluffy dog right over on Delaware Avenue. You may see them wandering about. It's just such a beautiful place to live, and being able to walk every place makes it as idyllic as you could ask for. And I really feel blessed to be able to live here and to have had the opportunity to serve on the board for the last 2 years. It's a lot of work, but it's valuable work. Anything that's worth doing is worth taking the time and doing the hard work to do. And I feel very much that this is an important work, and the people that are involved take it seriously, and I take it seriously and want to seek the best for the village. I think my philosophy is that local government is at its best when it's at its dullest. And so my goal, in addition to focusing on reforming our zoning code and making our streets safer and making sure the village is being passed on to the next generation in safe financial waters, my goal is to make it for those watching village politics, that it is as boring as watching golf on television. So that's all I have to say right now.
Thank you. Jeff?
My name's Jeff Gerhardt. I've been here since 1970 when I first came as a student at Delhi Tech. The next year, over that summer, I met my wife, and it turned out that she was going to be student teaching here in 71. So we were able to continue our relationship here, and we've sort of been here ever since. She taught for 34 years up at the school as a kindergarten teacher. She substituted for 12 years after that, so she's put a great deal of time into the community, and I've worked in various aspects. I taught in Stanford for 42 years. I coached for 38 of those 42 years. I taught English And one of the courses that I taught as an English teacher was speech and debate. And as part of that was the argumentation aspect of speech giving. One of the things that we always discussed and talked about was that it's very easy to criticize, very easy to find fault. It's very easy to sit back and say, oh, things are terrible, things are awful. But as I told them, if you don't have a solution, if you're not willing to work towards rectifying the issues or the problems that you see, then you should really keep your opinions to yourself. It doesn't help anyone to just simply criticize. And so I'm taking that advice, that reasoning, very seriously. And over the past year, I've worked as a trustee for a year now, learning the ins and outs of the local government. One of the things that I've found during the course of all of that is that the village is the people. The village is not the place. And all my life I have worked to serve people, and I wish to continue to do that. Service is one of the highest aspirations that I think that you can work towards. And so that's why I'm running for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Jesse?
Hi, my name is Jessica Raber. A lot of you may remember me as Jessie Reed, daughter of Alan Laurie Reed and the oldest of the Bramer kids. Ancestors on both sides of my family came to America on the Mayflower and have been in this area since its founding. They developed the land 2 stones for every dirt, as Senator Cook may have said. My great-grandpa Joe Rosa was a cauliflower farmer in Delhi in the 30s and 40s. My family survived and thrived due to grit, determination, and innovation. I have the same grit and determination that was passed down through generations, and I would like to put my innovative ideas to work, and yours as well, to the benefit of my hometown. I'm also a Bulldog and a Bronco, Delaware Academy and SUNY Delhi alumni. My love for both schools runs deep. I feel fortunate that my 3 children are able to attend Delaware Academy. I look forward to working to continue to expand the outreach and collaboration between both schools and the village. After earning an associate's degree at SUNY Delhi, I transferred to Cornell University, where I earned a bachelor's degree in landscape architecture. I'm an avid skier and snowboarder and spent several years exploring the backcountry in the Rocky Mountains in both Colorado and Utah. My love for the sport led me to my first professional job as a ski resort designer. I created master plans and other designs for both new and existing ski resorts, specializing in stormwater management and grading and drainage. I worked cooperatively with all parties involved, including the Bureau of Land Management. I was honored to be project manager for the world-class ski resort Snowbird, and many of my designs have been implemented both in the country and the world. Living in different states has shown me what other places have done, and I'd like to bring some fresh ideas to the table while preserving the small town way of life that is near and dear to all of our hearts. I'm passionate about communication and collaboration, and I like to keep local residents informed on my Facebook page, What's Up Delhi. One of my biggest goals as mayor is to keep you all informed and to encourage anyone who would like to participate in government to do so. I enjoy volunteering, and I'm currently working on Delhi's new community garden at Sheldon Park, which should reopen this spring. I'm honored to help the community and local children have an opportunity to grow their own food and grow closer to the land. Delhi mayoral candidates don't run as Republicans or Democrats. They have to choose a party to run under. My party is the Grassroots Party. A grassroots movement is one that embraces the people in the community as the basis for political action. I want to work alongside you and advocate for your wants and needs. Working together is the best way to make improvements in a small village that may not have a lot of pull in the town, county, or state. I'm excited to continue forming and growing relationships with you and our representatives so I can be the best public servant I can be. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dan?
Hi, I'm Dan Ayers. I first want to thank all of you for coming out today. It's good to see a full room. Also, I really want to thank all the other candidates for stepping up and wanting to take a leadership role in our community. I don't think we've had a competitive mayoral election in probably a decade. And I think that really does talk to how much we're all invested in this community. And I have to say, having read everyone's positions, I think we're all very similar. I think we all agree on many, many things, which I think will only make any one of us we can get more done because there's so much agreement. So I've lived in Delhi for 19 years. I came here to be the CEO of O'Connor Hospital, and I was CEO there for 10 years. Actually, I've been a CEO 4 times now, and particularly in healthcare, I've often said that the CEO role is one of the most political positions you can be in because you have a number of constituencies. You have the community, you have your board, you have regulators, you have physicians, you have staff, you have, you name it, everyone can have an opinion about your hospital, and you have to make things happen without alienating anybody. So very much have learned how to collaborate across differences. I was also a trustee in the past. It was a great and rewarding experience. I did leave Delhi, and I went back to West Virginia to do a turnaround of a hospital system down there, and I'm actually a native West Virginian. And it's interesting, I say that it's the Wizard of Oz paradox. You may click your heels 3 times and you really don't know where home is until you land, and Delhi is my home. That's why I came back, that's why I continue to live here. And I've seen changes in Delhi that I think are very exciting. I think we have a lot more diversity in terms of cultural diversity, in terms of businesses. I serve on other boards. I serve on the Otsego County Chamber of Commerce. I serve on the Cobleskill Regional Hospital Board. And people talk about Delhi, particularly in Oneonta. You know, we've got a cool factor going. And I think that's something we want to continue with. And I am dedicated to wanting to make a better, more livable village for all of our residents.
Great, thank you. And if our timekeeper, I love giving the boss instructions. This is so great. If our timekeeper would go to 2 minutes now for our answers. You all set? Yep. Okay, and Elizabeth will now ask questions of each of the candidates on a rotating basis. I'll just remind the candidates that you'll have 2 minutes to answer the question. Okay, and we're going to start with Janet.
Janet, first question. What qualifies you for the position you are running for?
I'm running for village trustee after already serving 1 year in this role. I have been able to enact change, to work on getting grant funding for some of our projects, and to continue to work with the rest of our board to discuss and to make decisions that are for the benefit of the community rather than necessarily what I might think or what another person may say. I have the time to devote to this and to handle the different aspects of the job, whether it is dealing with employees or dealing with the public, and trying to reach agreement or to reach some solutions as best we can. I think that answers the question enough, but thank you.
Thank you. Ian, what qualifies you for the position you are running for?
I think the first thing would be the 2 years that I've served in this position and the amount of knowledge that I've acquired and experience I've acquired through that process. It's been a tremendous learning experience, and I feel there's a lot more work to do. I feel in a much better place entering the role now than I did 2 years ago, obviously, because that was brand new then, and now I have a better idea of where things need to go, what work needs to be done. So there's that. there's also, as I mentioned in my written piece for the paper, that I take the role of trustee very seriously. I understand from a legal perspective that you are the steward of someone else's property, someone else's resources, and that's a very weighty position to hold, and I understand that. I take that very seriously and want to use the village's resources well, and make sure that we are leaving this village to our children in better shape than we found it.
Thank you. Jeff?
Very similar in that I served on the Board of Trustees for the last year. I've also in the past been the president of the trustees at the First Presbyterian Church for quite a few years. I currently serve as on the Board of Trustees for the Canton Free Library. In particular on that board, I'm serving as Buildings and Grounds Chair, and also serving on the Scholarship Committee, which the library offers every year for a couple of candidates. I was one of the founding fathers of the Headwaters soccer organization, and served as a trustee on that board, as treasurer and as vice president of that organization. In Stanford as a teacher there, I served on the negotiation team for many years. I also served as vice president of that organization. I've been part of a lot of different organizations, all of them involved with the budgets of those organizations, making sure that monies are allocated appropriately. So I have a pretty good understanding of how budgets work and what needs to be done with them, which makes me more familiar with some of the things that go on here in the village as part of the budgetary process that we're going through. The fact that I just like serving the needs of the people, the village. I think I have some ideas of directions that I would like to see us go in. And that's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you, Jeff. Jesse?
Thanks. Yeah, I think that my educational background and work history in planning really helps me to understand how a community can run and what types of things might improve a community, how things, how a well-oiled machine may run. But I think that the number one thing that I have that puts me in a great position to really help the village is that I really love to read and to write and to communicate. And I think that one of the best things that we can do to move Delhi forward in some of the ways that we haven't been able to in years is to really communicate with the village and get people to understand what needs to happen, and that it really takes a village to make some of these things happen. So what I'd really like to do is spend time communicating with other representatives and with villagers and people of the town and the county, and really try to get people to come together and participate in democracy, essentially.
Dan?
Yeah, I think the first thing is my experience. I've had over 30 years of executive leadership experience. Actually, it started as a commanding officer in the Navy as a lieutenant. And I have been writing and managing budgets for over 30 years in a very austere healthcare environment. So I know how to deal with small budgets, and I will say I've done numerous turnaround, particularly in healthcare, but also in for-profit sector. And while I may not know all the answers, I do know the questions. And I know how to kind of dig down and find solutions and find innovations. And really, I think the main thing that I could probably bring is relationships. When I walk into Senator Oberacker's office, his secretary knows me by name. I have Assemblyman Teague's cell phone number. So I have established relationships with some of our senior state representatives. I have a lot of experience in advocacy, both in Albany and in Washington, D.C. And I think I really want to bring, I really want to be able to do something. I want to do something for this community. I've lived here, I've been a volunteer, I've volunteered in a lot of ways. As you probably know, I'm the chair of the Delhi Beautification Committee. We took Christmas trees down this morning. And I think I show that I have kind of a passion for service. And I want to continue that service in the role of mayor.
Thank you. Okay, for our next question, we're gonna start with Ian. What are your top 3 priorities?
The top 3 priorities are to continue the work that I've been joined with a number of other residents in the town, in the village, to make our zoning code more friendly to both homeowners and to business owners. I want to make our streets safer for pedestrians. I think we could look at the speed zone and some of the more passive traffic control strategies. And then finally, as it has been mentioned already, address our financial situation, look at ways we can increase revenue, reduce expenditure, and leave the village in a better state financially.
Thank you. Jeff?
Usually with any organization, any group of people, what comes down to is you have to start with your budget. We need to get ourselves into a sound financial position from which we can grow the village and move forward. So the first thing that we need to do is deal with the budget, both on the side of expenditures and revenues. We've been dealing the past month and a half or so with the budget, almost line by line on the expenditure side of the budget, trying to bring that side of the budget down as well as work on the revenue side and increase it. And we've had some success at that to this point. We still need more. I also think that it's important that the village work hand in hand with the business aspect of the village, the business people, to work in a cooperative manner together to improve that part of the village. Although, and I say this, it can't be from a selfish point of view, because the businesses, the benefit that the village will accrue is for the people of the village. As far as the coffers of the village are concerned, because we're not receiving any of the increased revenues from sales taxes that might be acquired by improving the business, our only avenue in that direction is to increase perhaps the property values, which would increase the property taxes. So by working with them, it might hopefully get a little bit better. And then we really need to take a very serious look at the infrastructure. As I pointed out on numerous occasions, we have a number of things in this building that need to be addressed, that are not cheap, they're not inexpensive. And so we need to take a hard look at our infrastructure. That includes the village garage, that includes this building, that includes virtually any part of where the village has a fingerprint in the village itself. Those are the 3 items that I see as priorities.
Thank you. Jesse?
Thanks. So my first 2 priorities are to really chase down the SUNY Impact Aid, which we, as far as I know, have lost. We've had it since 2016, and I believe that it may not come through this year. I've already contacted all of the mayors and supervisors in the state who are SUNY schools and asked them to reach out to their representatives and to have their communities also write their representatives in an effort to sort of get that grassroots movement. I would like to also continue working towards the host community benefit agreement with the county. I believe that it's time that they take a share of the property tax loss that we incur due to having so many properties in the village that are county properties. I think that there is support for that within the county for doing that, and I think that it is possible to reach out to all of the supervisors and convince them one by one if necessary. Another thing that I really want to make sure happens, which I know is sort of happening right now, but I would like to see it happen much more quickly, is changing the zoning so that parking that's dissuading businesses from coming to the village can be changed yesterday. And also I would like to have some of the regulations changed so that it's easier for people to add apartments to their garages or carriage houses. Right now, some of the laws are making that difficult for people to do, and I think that that would be a fairly easy thing to change in order to create more housing and also more income during this recession for some of our property owners here in the village.
Thank you. Dan?
Yeah, I think the main thing I'd like to focus on is kind of a strategic view. I mean, we all know that we have to improve the tax base. We have to increase that tax base. And I think you kind of start by looking at economic development, because a healthy economy, that tide will raise all boats. So in a strategic view, initiatives kind of are like a Venn diagram where they overlap each other. And I think I agree with many of the things I've already heard. One is housing. We need to develop more housing. We need more moderate income housing. We need senior housing. And to do that, we also need changes in zoning. Right now, the governor has an executive order for $250,000 for infrastructure funds and $20 million for planning funds. We need to get in line for those dollars so we can create more livable space within the village. By doing that, that will then help attract businesses. I mean, we have so much to offer in this community, not for businesses, but also for people to live here. If we take a look at our major employers, how many of their employees don't live in the village or even in the town? So I think that is a key piece. And then the last thing is looking for that outside funding, be it the host community or be it the pilot. But really, if we first focus on housing and making zoning more flexible, then that is something we completely control, and we don't have to depend on the will of of either the state or the county.
Thank you. Janet?
I thought going first was hard. Going last is, I think, harder, because so much of what are priorities, you're hearing the same themes, and the same themes going through here. We have to promote our village interests, and sometimes that does mean being a good neighbor, and sometimes that means advocating for ourselves. My role as a trustee, I don't get to make those great connections that the mayor will get to make with the county and our state representatives at the same level. But as a trustee, we need to look out for our employees and our volunteers. Part of what makes our community work, part of what helps our infrastructure actually exist and provide the services that we need. And one of the things that should always be on our minds is how to make sure that these are sustainable efforts, both for the environment, but also for our budget. And marrying those two is sometimes a challenge, but it's a challenge that we need to take on, and I think that we can continue to do that.
Thank you. All right. For our next question, we're going to start with Jeff. What areas of the budget need attention?
All of them? That's the easiest answer. We have, in working with the budget, one of the things that I think that I have perceived is that the budget has been cut back as far as the area of expenditures is concerned almost to its lowest limits. That leaves us the revenue side of the budget to try and increase and bring the difference that we have between revenues and expenditures being the area of greatest reward, perhaps, so to speak. And some of the things that have already been mentioned, such as the SUNY aid, which we last received in 2020, and the pursuit of the sales tax, are all good ideas. But I think the area that I would really like to see us emphasize is to sit down, the trustees, whoever the mayor is, as well as the code enforcement officer, Tom Little, and look at the map of the village. Because we are limited in terms of property, places where we can expand are very limited, and perhaps we need to take a look at the village as it stands now and see where we can make changes as it stands now to make improvement for things such as increased housing, increased business opportunities for people to come into the village. It's sort of a circular, you need the money, you need the people, you need the changes, and it just kind of swirls together, all as part of one end goal. And I think that's the direction that I would most like to see.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Jesse?
Yeah, I have not sat in on the budget meetings to know exactly, but from discussions that I've had with trustees and with the mayor, I have gotten the feeling that what Jeff said is accurate, that it's less about overspending and more about revenue. And that sort of goes right back to the discussion about the county. You know, they've, and not just the county, I'm picking on them a little bit because they have already begun a tradition of a host community benefit when they gave money to the Walton landfill. But, so I do think that there's precedent and that they should pitch some money to help pad our revenue income. But also SUNY Delhi and Delaware Academy are both really big entities that are tax exempt as well. And there are many other tax exempt operations here within the village. One of the things that I think would be super helpful in order to bring in more revenue is to look at these organizations and these huge users of our water and sewer that don't pay anything toward maintenance. So I would like to see their rates perhaps change to reflect the fact that they are not paying toward the maintenance of the system. And I think that that would be a great way to bring in some more money. I think there are probably some other places where we could look at reducing some expenditures. And I would like to really go over the budget with a fine-tooth comb personally and just make sure that nothing has been missed and that there may be some opportunities there to reduce some expenditures as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan?
Yeah, I have been attending the budget meetings, and I have to say, one is government budgets are very complex. They're not like a for-profit. They're not like a not-for-profit. They have a whole different complexity that they have rules and regulations that they have to follow. And the one thing I do want to say, I want to give the trustees and the mayor a lot of credit because they are very frugal. I really do believe, like everyone else, it hasn't been an expense issue, it's a revenue issue. But I think that the revenue issues, we're probably in 3 to 5 years until we start to deplete the reserves, and so we need to be thinking long-term as well as short-term. Oftentimes, when you start making cuts on a short-term basis, you are limiting your future opportunities. So again, this is one of those where whoever gets in the office is going to end up being nose deep into those budgets for the first And frankly, we're gonna accept the budget that's already been, pretty much approved, although, you know, not much can be changed between now and when it will be finalized. So it's a long-term solution. It's not a short-term one.
Thank you. Janet?
So, I think everybody's saying the same thing. I really don't have much to add. I do appreciate all the compliments on how we are trying to do our best to not have expenses running wild. So thank you all. I do. It does take a lot of work, and sometimes telling people no is a hard thing. We do need better revenue, and I spoke earlier about saying I got some grants. Well, that's lovely, but that only lasts for the length of that grant. And we do need to look at all revenue options that are available. Some will work, some will not. In this past year, we did get that parking study done because it was a possible chance for improving the turnover of traffic and parking, and it might have, there was that hope that maybe it would help shore up some of our revenue. That did not turn out to be the case, but we do need to continue to explore options and sometimes spend money to explore those options. It's one of the things that as trustees, as a member of the board, we're gonna have to judiciously choose to do, as well as all the reading and all of the connections that we have.
Ian?
Not much to add. I will say I've been impressed with Jeff and Janet being on the board in the last year, how creative they have been in looking at the budget as newcomers and coming up with ways that we can creatively save money, seek new revenue, and make sure that we are being good stewards of these resources. Like Dan mentioned, as a village, and it's not that different from a household budget. You've got to balance the saving costs, but also not being penny wise, pound foolish, because you can't skimp on your infrastructure, because that's going to end up costing you more money down the road if it fails and is done poorly, or if you let it go too long. Same thing when it comes to equipment. You have to be creative in the way that you finance the equipment, because if you don't have the equipment, your infrastructure is not going to be taken care of, so you've got to spend the money. Same thing with your employees. You have to invest in your employees, because they're the ones who make the village function. They're the ones who give us the quality of life that we have come to expect and enjoy in the village. So it's easy to come at the budget swinging the machete, thinking you're gonna, lop off a lot of waste, and then you get here and it's like, oh, wait, no, it's not that easy. So I've been impressed with Janet and Jeff and their creativity. So that's all I
Thank
have.
you. All right, we'll start with Jesse for our next question. Do you have any solutions to stop further properties from being sold to nonprofits or land change to non-taxable land?
Well, I guess I'm not quite sure what the legal options are for the village in regard to stopping the sale of land. I would certainly like to look at zoning and that type of thing and see if we can put some requirements on that type of thing to make it less likely that those properties will be sold to a nonprofit organization. And I think, I guess I'll be a little redundant here and go back to the grassroots. I mean, I think that if the community is aware that some of our property is going to go to another, non-taxable situation, and a lot of people get involved and show up and say, we're not gonna have this sale go through, I think that may be our best way to stop things like that from happening in the future. I think it's really hard for a board or a mayor to sit back and inject themselves in private sales and say, no, this can't happen. But if there is a community effort to stop something like that from going forward, I think that's maybe one of the best things that we could do.
Thank you.
I would encourage the nonprofits to consider a lease rather than a purchase. Because if you lease it, then there's a pass-through of taxes that doesn't look like a pilot, right? So, for instance, if they're gonna build this house, well, have someone else build it. It'll probably be less expensive because you don't have to do it, under prevailing wages. And then you can rent it back, and instead of spending that $1 million or whatever it is, your lease expense is less, and you have more money to serve the community. So to me, that would be one of the ways that we can encourage the nonprofits to go with a lease versus own. Now, a lot of times, businesses look at it, and a lot of these people are business people, and they think about a balance sheet. Well, the county doesn't have a balance sheet. They don't have to worry about carrying an asset on their books. What they need to be concerned about is how much money do they have to provide services to our communities.
Thank you. Janet?
These are very similar answers, and so I'm not gonna have much more to add to that. We do have a zoning board of review and a planning board. As a trustee, we need to support those boards and make sure that we're giving them the information they need, but also the support when it comes time to make any decisions that we get to do. As far as other options, I'm really intrigued about what Dan just said about the lease. I've heard of long-term leases versus short-term leases, and I've got some reading for tonight. But as far as what a trustee can do, we've got to support those who are making decisions, and if we need to advocate, if we need to reach out to our communities to help us communicate or advocate more, that is also part of what I can do, or what a trustee can do.
Thank you. Ian?
I don't know that this exactly addresses the question, but I think one thing that's an important point is that our water district, our water sewer district is distinct from our general budget. And so the infrastructure costs for maintenance and for carrying the debt for the improvements that have been made to those systems in the past, that is borne by any user in that district, which includes the county, which includes the nonprofits. So that is one area we are looking at in terms of making sure that all the users are carrying their weight within the district. When it comes to the general budget, that's where the issue comes, because that's where the general tax levy is being supported, and how to discourage nonprofit development in the town or in the village. That's I don't have a good answer to that right now.
Thank you. Jeff?
I've already made contact with, on this very issue with Senator Molinaro. We briefly discussed some of that. We have made plans to discuss it further in the future. I also have a planned meeting with Mr. Oberacker this next Friday regarding the same issue. But I think it needs to go beyond just that. And for this, I'd like to give Janet's husband a shout out, sitting in the back of the room, and say hello, because I know that he brought to Janet's attention that we as a village actually have more power than we thought we did in regards to how the property of the village is used. We are currently trying to explore exactly what that means and what powers are given to us in regards to those buildings. So I think those are avenues that we really need to pursue, look further into.
Thank you. Ready for our next question? We'll start with Dan. What is something that you feel you can have a positive impact on in our community?
Well, I have to tell you, I keep going back to economic development. I think, as I said earlier, I think a strong economy will help us on many different levels. And if you look at the assets we have in our community, we have a great high school, we have a hospital, we've got college, we've got police, we got everything that we really need to have in order to support new business, new development. Plus, you look up and down Main Street and you look at the different types of businesses that we have attracted here and the different types of business models. I mean, you look at Green Slate, you look at Stone and Sawyer, you look at all of that, and it's really showing a new way that business can be done within the village. And so again, we get back to zoning, we get back to housing. Those are the igniters. Those are the things that are going to really help turn the corner on bringing more business. The other thing is tourism. We're really missing out on tourism quite a bit. I mean, one of the things we need to get back to is, the plan that SUNY Delhi had for a hotel or some other type of place where people can stay. Because when people come here and they see the fair on the square, or they see other events, or they see our parades, they see the things we do, they end up wanting to move here because now they can. Post-pandemic, people can work anywhere. They can do, we are now we can be a veteran community to New York City. And so those are the two areas that I think I could really help, spur some development in.
Thank you. Janet?
We talk a lot about infrastructure and budget and all these really serious things that we have. But one of the things when you first said that question that I thought of was how to be welcoming. And Dan, you hit it right on the head. We have to have the right brand and welcoming for tourism. We have a lot of great events that come around, mainly in the summer and the warmer months, but we do need to make sure that year-round we have a place where if people do want to stop in Delhi and visit our businesses or eat at one of our restaurants or cafes, that they can do that they aren't afraid to find parking somewhere, or they can't find parking, it's too far to walk. The sidewalks aren't maintained, or it just kind of looks dingy or dirty. It's kind of the fun stuff. That's the beautification or the recreation that is part of our role. And that's where I see that as a trustee, I can bring part that benefit or positive impact to our community.
Thank you. Ian?
I'm gonna go back to zoning, just because that's something that I've spent a lot of time on in the last 2 years, and there is a group meeting, and it's as much as we'd like it to go faster, we're changing codes, and there was a reason people put those codes in the first place. Some of those reasons are no longer applicable, but they still need to be examined, and once you get hashing it out, as Dwayne knows, on the committee as well, it's a long, slow process, and I feel like we're making good progress. And the reason I think that's an important emphasis is because if we're doing it right, we're going to enable more to be brought into the village without subtracting from what's here. And Dan was mentioning some of the things that make Delhi great, and as did Janet. And a lot of those things are, we do have a hospital. Well, they don't pay taxes. We do have a college, and no, they don't pay taxes either. So some of the things that aren't paying taxes are part of what makes Delhi great. So that's why it's like, I don't necessarily want to discourage nonprofits from coming to the village. I want to make it possible for more people to come here to live, more people to come here to start their own businesses, so that it's not a zero-sum game, is what I'm saying. So if we are making our zoning code more welcoming and friendly to people who want to live here and work here, then the pie is getting bigger instead of being, just reallocated.
Thank you. Jeff?
Cooperation. One of the things that I've always done, organizing and getting everyone to work toward the same end. This is not something that one person is going to solve. Situations that we have within the village are not going to be solved by the mayor alone. They're not going to be solved by the trustees alone. It's going to take the work and the effort of everyone in the village. And it's going to take all of the committees. It's going to take organizing everything and focusing the direction that all of the people or all of the effort needs to be directed towards in order to solve some of the issues and problems and help the village grow and become more than it is now.
Thank you. Jesse?
Yeah, I think that a really important thing that I can bring to the table is the sharing of information and communication and bringing people together in the village. I am doing that with my Facebook page, What's Up Delhi, currently, and I would really like to work to make things easier for people to navigate, whether it is putting code zoning information on the internet where it's very easy to find, or making it very easy to understand what's going on at the meetings each month, and if something, it may be of special interest, that everyone in the village knows about it, so that we can start that process of knowing whether or not something will work from the beginning. I think that one of the things that I learned about as a landscape architect is the importance of signage, and I think that we could do better in the village, signing some of like our parking and some different things like that to make it easier for people to park and go to wherever they would like to eat or shop. And so I think just communication and really bringing people together is what I think that I can offer the village, one of the things.
Thank you. Okay, for our next one, we'll start with Janet. What is something you want to change about Delhi?
Oh, man. And I can't just ask for like $1 billion trust that refills itself, because
You could.
I don't know, we talk a lot about finances, and having a larger tax base, having more developable land would be two things that if I could change about Delhi without losing the wonder of being here and being in a small rural community, those are things that if I could have a little more of those, I would like that, so.
Thank you. Ian?
Mm,
I took the easy one.
right.
You had more time to think.
I know. It's,
You know, come on.
But I think that's a testament to how great Delhi is. It takes a really long time to think of something that needs to get better.
Jeff's on the spot now.
Yeah, somebody, people need to pick up after their dogs better. That's one thing. But no, I think one thing that I would like to see more of is the sort of community spirit that you see at Fair on the Square through the summer. I'd like to see more of that all year round. And that's not something that the Board of Trustees is responsible for, but I want to be part of that if we can. And I certainly want to be part of that as in my individual capacity.
Thank you. Jeff?
I completely agree with Janet as far as the developable land portion of it is concerned, because really, as a community, I say this all the time, we are a village of approximately 3,500 residents. On any given business day, our population swells to between 10 and 15,000. We are providing services in a lot of ways for people who are entering the village without necessarily having to pay for it. And we are limited in terms of the size that we can grow. That 3,500 is difficult to increase. There's no place for them as far as living within the village is concerned. The expansion of that, our village limits, if we can do that, and that takes a great deal of money, because then we need to provide water and sewer services, which in expanding our present system requires a great deal of money to do that. So I would love to be able to expand the village limits, to grow the village outward, which would give more opportunity for businesses, give more opportunity for people who wish to live here within the village limits. We continually think about growing outward, but lately I've begun to think, are there ways that we can also grow upward in addition to the outward spread? So that would be my one big wish, is that we can bring more people into the family.
Thank you. Jesse?
Yeah, I I love all of these responses so far, and Ian's response. I mean, I love that. I feel that in my heart. I would love to see that fair on the square, farmers market happiness really expand within our village year round. But if I had to say that I would change one thing, I think that I would like to change the fact that a lot of people feel like they can't afford to live here in Delhi anymore. You know, I don't like to hear of people who've been here their whole lives, not being able to find a place to live in the village where they want to be. And, you know, I understand that that's a tall order, but if I could change that, if I could snap my fingers and change that, I would.
Thank you. Yeah.
I agree with all of that, but my own one is that fire whistle. I live on High Street, and I gotta tell you what, I cannot believe there's not a better technology than that fire whistle. The other thing,
You could get in a lot of trouble for saying that, just so you know.
well, you know, it is what it is.
I've been there.
But the other thing is the entrances to Delhi, some of them could really use some improvement. Because sometimes when you particularly come in 28 south or 10 from the east, it sends a message before you get to town square. And so I'd really like to see if there was a way to improve our entrances.
Thank you. All right, for our next question, we'll start with Ian. What would you do about student housing and absentee landlords?
Do about that. So, student housing is something we can't escape because we are in a college town, and as has been mentioned, being a college town is one of the reasons that makes Delhi what it is. And so, you can't have a college town without student housing. So you're never going to escape that. I do think that we need to be consistent and diligent in enforcing our codes. I think we could look at because there is a fee, an inspection fee that is assessed for keeping those places inspected. So that would be another thing to look at, and we are looking at is, are we charging the right amount for that? Because those landlords need to have some skin in the game, because if they're not here cleaning up after the messes, if they're not here being the ones calling the police when there's rowdiness or messes being made or fights breaking out, then they need to be contributing to the village's, damaged quality of life because of that. So I think enforcing our existing codes is important, and looking at giving some more buy-in from those landlords is worth looking at. As far as absentee landlords, I think it's basically the same issue. If they're not maintaining their property, they need to face some consequences. If they're not being responsible neighbors, they need to be held to account.
Thank you. Jeff?
It's an issue that I think is going to continue to become more and more prominent, and the reason I say that is because going from a 2-year school to a 4-year school, I believe that the college is in the process of expanding their numbers a little bit, so that's going to increasingly be an infringement on the community of those types of housing. Again, as Ian spoke, being very diligent with the ordinances and codes that we have on the books. If we need to, we may need to add to those areas in order to ensure that the people of this village are not being imposed upon by that. I also think that some of the changes that can be made in the ordinances that open up some of the businesses, many of the houses in the village are very large houses. For people to come in and purchase those homes is quite an expenditure in terms of purchase and taxes. But those are types of things that maybe, just perhaps, could be used for other types of things, clinics, dental offices, those types of things that would be willing to purchase a larger home. If we encourage those kinds of things, then we don't have to worry about them being purchased for student housing. We just need to encourage the economic side of it to make those feasible, attractive types of properties, where that then forces some of the student housing into other areas.
Thank you. Jesse?
Yeah, I guess I'll echo what has already been said a little bit. I think that we need to make sure any codes that are already on the books are being enforced if there's a problem, and maybe there need to be some additional codes included if people aren't happy with the way things are being handled with this housing. You know, I think that one thing in particular, noise and trash, are two things that are probably the most annoying for neighbors, and so I think that we can make sure that that's taken seriously and that people's concerns are heard, and that if there need to be appropriate changes, whether it's making sure that these things are being enforced or changing things to work better for the community, whether the time for the noise ordinance isn't useful or things like that. I think that would be a way to make sure everyone is getting along the best possible. So.
Thank you.
I would say when I was on the village board, that was a big area of my concern. I mean, my biggest concern is some of these houses being unsafe. And so I would really promote very strict zoning enforcement and even zoning changes if necessary, because, you know, I just feel somewhat responsible as a you know, when I was on the board, that we would allow such conditions to exist within our community. And, you know, just think about this. On these houses, if we were to have a fire on a windy day, we could lose half a block or more. I mean, I had a fire next to my house, and it got very close. And so, you know, I think many of these places are potential fire traps, and I would be all over very serious zone enforcement.
I think we've heard two things here. One, we have to support what we already have. We have a zoning code, we have a code enforcer, we have police, we have people and some structures or some policies and procedures that we need to make sure that we are supporting, reviewing, and possibly revising. The second thing you heard, especially from Dan, was we need to have compassion. Not all of us can do all that we need to do, and when you get in a bad situation, part of our role, if we have these rules, if we have these regulations, is also being able to identify if people do need help, where can they go to get help? At one of the previous board meetings, we actually talked about blighted properties, and after each year of not paying taxes, it gets so bad that there's no point in trying to get out of that hole. You're too far, it's too far gone, it's too expensive. It doesn't look good for us, it doesn't feel good for us. We need to have compassion, but we also need to have the ways to help people, but also help the larger community. And student housing and absentee landlords are two areas that come to mind right away. But this is a larger community than just those two areas, and by supporting our employees, our practices, and our residents, it's an ongoing process that will always need to be reviewed and probably revised for as long as people actually live in Delhi.
I don't think I used up my full 2 minutes. Can I just add one little thing? And this isn't, again, from the village's perspective, but I think as trustees we can set a good example. Is, you know, I live kitty corner from a college house, and I have found that the annoying behaviors, and this is aside from the property itself, but some of the annoying behaviors that you might expect have been lessened when I take the time to invest in making that contact. So that compassion that Janet mentioned, I think, is really important. There was a night where it was 2 a.m. and they were still partying hard, and we had just recently had a baby, and I was tired, and I held off. I wasn't gonna go out that night, but I went over the next morning, and my wife had baked some bread, and took them a loaf of bread and knocked on the door, and had to knock louder because the music was too loud, and guy comes out in a towel, and he's like, "Hi, welcome to the neighborhood. Here's some bread," and it turned out to be a really neat opportunity to connect with somebody who's a guest in my village, in my neighborhood, and we didn't have a problem the rest of the semester, the rest of the school year. It was obviously there are bad apples in every basket, but I think if we engage them, we will reap some good fruit.
Thank you. This will be our last question, and this is for mayor candidates only. We'll start with you, Jeff. If you became mayor, what is your strategy to make some of the necessary changes within the hierarchy that has governing power over the village?
The structure of the governing body for the village is pretty well set. What I would say is that I think it's important to recognize what the mayor's job is. I've said it to quite a few people. My running for mayor as a trustee, I'm actually taking a step down as far as power is concerned, because it's really the mayor's job to represent the village and to represent the board's parameters that they establish for the running of the village. It's the mayor is really the business manager, and it requires time and effort to do that. I think I've established a pretty good working relationship with the employees of the village, and that's important. I think I can maintain an open door policy that people want to talk, I'm more than happy to do so. But it's the board of which the mayor is a part, but the mayor only votes in the event of a tie amongst the trustees. It's really the mayor's job. I would have to turn to Janet, Ian, Jeremy, and whoever else if I'm going to be mayor, and ask for their input and everything. I think that cooperative, as I mentioned before, that cooperation is essential. There cannot be an adversarial relationship in any of this, or it's to the detriment of the village. So, I don't know as it's always been that way, but I've looked and I've checked, and the mayor doesn't hold quite as much power as I think everybody thinks he or she does. It's really is a business manager position and a representative of the people to put the best face on the village.
Thank you. Jesse?
Yeah, in terms of changing the hierarchy, that, as Jeff said, it's sort of set how it is. The one thing that I can think of that would change that would be if the village were to dissolve and then become part of the town, which would literally change the hierarchy because there would be no board, there would be no mayor. And I don't know if that's what villagers would like. So I think that is, in terms of that, I would rather see a study done to see what kind of shared services might be able to be agreed upon between the village and the town, or even the village and the county. I think that is one way that we could increase cooperation in that regard. And I think that I will say again that when the village needs to change something and aren't getting resistance from the town or the county or the state, one of the biggest things that we can do is come together as a village with numbers on our side saying, look, we need this, we need that, and use bodies, people, who are in agreement with something that needs to happen to persuade the town or the county to do something. So I think that a lot of it involves persuasion and cooperation with not only the mayor, not only the trustees, but also the residents of the village to say, hey, you know, we're not getting as much property tax as we need. We're not getting a share of the sales tax from our county. We need help. And I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. I think that asking for help and bringing a community together in order to persuade other agencies to go along with what we've proposed is a show of strength, actually. So.
Thank you.
I guess I'm wondering about the intention of the question when it talks about the hierarchy, whether that is referring to shared services where we now have a town employee who oversees village employees, or whether it's a matter of accountability of the current department heads to the mayor. I would say on the first count, with regards to the shared services, I sat on the shared services committee when I was a trustee, and I think we've made some great strides there. And I think there's a lot of opportunities to continue to work on shared services. But there again, there's got to be, you know, I know that individual, it's difficult because they have two masters. They have the village and the town, and so how does any tension there get resolved? And I think that normally happens through the shared services committee. Now, if it's regarding accountability of the department heads, I think that's, you know, it's always been my experience pretty clear. You set out expectations and you hold them accountable. Now, accountability doesn't mean, you know, you're writing somebody up all the time. It's like you have a conversation with them about setting standards and expectations, and you continue to follow that up. So, and I have a lot of experience in dealing with a lot of department heads over a lot of years. So, again, I'm not quite sure what the real intention of the question is, but that's the way I interpret it.
Thank you. Right, as that was our last question, each candidate will now have 2 minutes for their closing statement, and we will start with Jessie.
Oh, okay. Again, I will just say my name is Jessica Raber, and I'm very grateful that the reporter put this on so that we all have a chance to say our piece. And I'm happy to see everyone here as well, and I've heard some really great things from everyone, so I feel really good about the future of the village. And I just want to say again that my goal as mayor would be to do my best to keep everyone informed, to read everything that I can get my hands on, be really knowledgeable in what is happening and what needs to happen, and spend a lot of time writing as well, whether it needs to be a grant or a persuasive letter. I would really like to spend time doing that on the village's behalf. And I would like to spend time building relationships and getting to know all the trustees more, and the town employees, as well as county and any representatives at the state level that I am just really looking forward to growing those relationships and spending time advocating for our village.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to thank the reporter for this. I want to thank everybody for coming out and spending your Saturday afternoon with us, and all of the really wonderful candidates. I think we're all very much aligned in a lot of our positions, and I think that's great because it does speak to the future of our community. The one thing I want to say is that I have a lot of experience. Of a lot of executive experience. I know some of you are probably asking the question, I have a full-time job, I sit on a lot of boards, how am I going to be able to do this job? Well, if I've learned anything in over 40 years of work, it's time management and it's to have a bias for action. When you're doing things, things happen. You know, it's really about taking initiative, and that has always been kind of my trait. Is that if you want something just to if you don't want anything to happen, don't hand it to me, because I really get engaged. And so my leadership team where I work now, they've been trained, they're great, they run operations. My job is strategic, and I think I can bring that same strategic view to the village as well.
Thank you. Janet?
Well, thank yous have been said, so I'll skip that, but, Election Day is March 21st. It's a big decision for mayor. It's hopefully not too big a decision for trustee, because there's 2 spots and 2 of us running right now. But thank you for listening. Go back, listen to this again. Listen to what we're saying, read, talk to each other, talk to us, and consider what we're saying, both here and with other times you've interacted with us or other things that we've said. We are here for you. I know that's my reason. I have no reason to doubt that's why everybody else is here. But this is a big decision coming up. And after doing all that wonderful stuff, you get to vote. Thank you again for coming here. And once again, thanks to the reporter for hosting this.
I won't repeat the thanks because it's all there. I'm very encouraged that this number of people came out to come to a Meet the Candidates event. It's always encouraging, even if it's a hot topic or people are upset. It is encouraging when we have a full room for a village board meeting, and I'm encouraged with the level of community engagement that we've seen, and I hope that continues. I'm excited for this next term. I'm assuming nobody's going to start a write-in campaign between now and March 21st. So I'm looking forward to this next term and working hard and continuing the work that's already been done.
Conversation. I'm slow to arrive at conclusions, and I am quick to change those conclusions. I think that's important, to listen to all of the different components of the village before rushing headlong into any kind of decision. And I think it's important that, given new information, that I adjust those conclusions accordingly and appropriately. I would love to be able to, and I probably still can, walk down through this main street of Delhi and talk to people, just on the street, walk into the businesses and talk to the owners and see how things are going. Doesn't have to be about anything important, but just, I think that connection is what really is the most important part of all of this. To hear, to listen, to bring that information to the board and to the people who are most affected by that information. I think that's what's needed at this point, to converse with all of the people who feel that they have been ostracized, made as outliers from the village. I think it's important to bring things back to a middle ground, to make everyone feel that they have that voice, and to contribute just in that way, and to be a good business manager.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. And thank you all for coming to support the democratic process and showing your interest in the village of Delhi. Voting will take place here on March 21st from 9 a.m. from noon to 9 p.m. Thank you.
To subscribe or advertise, call 607-464-4009.